Alrighty, y'all. Today we're going over characters in For Honor. Not just any characters, but the 5 most underrated ones. This is an opinion, of course, and what is determined as underrated varies from person to person. Since this is the internet after all, I'm sure everyone will agree with my opinion and treat it as law of the land. Just kidding. There are going to be those who disagree with my opinions, and those who do agree. No matter, this video is subjective, as there are a couple of heroes I don't see too often, and it surprises me as these particular 5 can perform very well in their given scenario. Unfortunately, in almost any multiplayer game, especially PvP multiplayer games, power creep is bound to happen. Not to say that these 5 heroes are better than the meta, but they can perform extremely well if played correctly to their own strengths. With that being said, let's go over who I believe are the 5 most underrated heroes in For Honor, and why, with a few honorable mentions. Now, this is in no particular order, however I'm going to keep it as symmetrical as possible, with one hero from each faction as there are 5 factions in total. Yes, I know the Outlanders only have 3, however I think it'll be fun to pick one out of the 3. And starting out with the Knights, there are 9 in total to choose from, each one with their own strengths and weaknesses. However, there is one who is nerfed into the ground and has slowly creeped his way up and can put out some massive damage along with healing in intense scenarios. I'm talking about Griffin. Griffin is a hybrid. Like that class means anything anymore, a hybrid is a mixture of different elements, and Griffin is just that. He can kind of do a bit of everything, but it's not as good as his meta counterparts, but he can still perform very well. And keep in mind here, I'm using the term meta loosely, as the farther you go into conquest rounds and tournaments, Griffin can still be used effectively, as there are more strategies in tournament settings compared to your normal matchmaking. On release, Griffin created quite the uproar as being broken and overpowered due to his oppressive mix-up, damage, healing, ganking, and team fighting capabilities. Back then, if there was a Griffin in a team fight, you were not going to kill his teammate, easily at least. You see, one aspect that made him really strong was that he had 3 healing feats. Not 1, not 2, but 3, and all healed for massive amounts of damage and cleansed effects. It's a shame that it doesn't cleanse corruption, as it would be cool lore-wise, but at that point in the game, it was all about shiny rock go burr due to that one story designer they fired. Anyways, you see, a strong feat combo coined Fury Flask is a must-pick in tournaments and in any setting, especially in the tournaments, as you cannot have duplicate tier 4s. So it was imperative that you use the Fury Flask well. If you didn't, Griffin would come in with just a measly tier 2 and heal away all of that fire damage you worked hard to get. It's even worse with perks, but thank God they do not allow them in tournaments, as rapid refresh is absolutely busted. And let's keep going through time, and Griffin got nerfed hard. His tier 2 and tier 3 healing got nerfed, and so did his damage on his in-chain bash. It used to do 28 damage. Yep, one wrong read and you lose around 1.5 bars of HP. Then his neutral bash got nerfed and it had its input changed. After the nerfs, you never really saw a Griffin unless it was somebody racing the 70. Then, out of the blue, a buff was announced for Griffin. His hyper armor on his finisher was made faster, and his dash light was given the superior property, or enhanced, meaning it would not be interrupted. This helped him out tremendously, and I'm surprised that I do not see as many. He can still pump out massive damage, and his 50-50 mix-up is still good, even though the damage was lowered. His ganks are no laughing matter, as he can pump out insane damage to an opponent, and if you're coordinated enough too. Not to mention the hitbox on his chain heavies are insane, and he can hit multiple people at once. I suggest you go on and give him a try, as in your average matchmaking experience, you can perform very well with him, and most people are, well, for a lack of better words, monkey brain, and will fall for the same tricks 9 out of 10 times. Now, he'll struggle hard against that one 4-stat comp team that can react to everything that you run into once in a blue moon, but outside of that very specific niche scenario, he can perform very well. Go on and give him a try. You won't regret it once you understand his learning curve. Speaking of a learning curve, let's move into a hero in the Viking faction that some consider to be a feast or famine. Much like feasting, we will be feasting on next with Shaman. Let me start out by saying, no, Highlander is not on here. That hero is overrated and is in desperate need of a rework, and the only thing he has going for him is he is very punishing to fight. Anyways, Shaman is, well, the Shaman, and that means, and I quote here, a person regarded as having access to and influence in the world of good and evil spirits, especially among some peoples of Northern Asia and North America. Typically, such people enter a trance state during a ritual and practice divination and healing. Shamans are in nearly all major religions or practices, and sometimes they are referred to as witches, medicine men and women, witch doctors, and so on. Shamans were held very highly in their community as they could talk to the gods and nature. They were the ones you went to when you needed divine inspiration as a Viking. And much like an oracle in Greek mythology, they heard voices, and you can see subtle hints of this in Shaman's design in her finishers and the way when she moves about when she is idle. She, for the lack of better terms, is a feral cat and batshit insane, and the devs do a good job of portraying this in her fashion. Not to mention, one of her finishers is calming the voices, or when she literally rips out your heart as an offering and casts it aside due to it being unworthy. Unfortunately, I do not know much of her history as when she released, as I did not play her as much back then, and that's when I was taking a break from a game at that time. But one thing I do remember is that unspeakable 50 damage bite. I remember her breaking the laws of physics to chase me down at Mach 10 to whisper sweet nothings in my ear as she rips out my throat while I'm sent back to the spectating screen. She has received some buffs and nerfs. Most notably, her unblockable damage has been reduced, the bite damage reduced, and her dagger feint has been standardized. I don't know the exact number of it, but from what I've heard on all sides, it's 400 MS now. Now, on paper, it seems like she has very strong tools, to which she does, however. There are some major downsides that deter players from choosing her. That being her low HP, reflex guard, lack of team fighting, and she is heavily focused on 1v1 scenarios, and mainly being used to contest points or chase someone down. But at that point, just choose a Fira at that point, or Shinobi. Now, in 1v2 scenarios is where she shines, or 1v1 scenarios. She is a very oppressive hero and can react. And not many can react to her. There's only a select few who can even react, and they have said it's extremely difficult. Not to mention, she can also heal herself while the opponent is bleeding, plus the pressure that gives is amazing, as your opponent has to worry about eating massive damage if they get bit, and it can turn around a 1v1 in the blink of an eye. Sadly, once another opponent shows up during your 1v1 and it turns into a 1v2, your strengths start to fade away pretty quickly. Sure, you can get revenge and hit somebody for massive damage with a throw punish, but any smart player will GB your recovery and stall more of your revenge. This is not to say she is one of the worst in the team fights. That goes to PK. Get fucked, PK mains. She can still perform decently if she hangs out on the edge of a team fight, only punishing recoveries with her dagger cancel or peeling. Her having reflex guard does not help, as it's an outdated mechanic. Please remove it, Ubisoft. It's trash. Nobody likes it. You constantly have to keep an eye on your health, your team, the enemy, and your guard. There is a lot to worry about. Don't let that deter you, though, as she can cause chaos on the enemy team and chase down your opponents. Not to mention, she does have Fury Flask and can sway a team fight that way. If you're up for the challenge and want to have the zoomies at all times, a shaman is a perfect choice for you, and a good shaman can disrupt enemy rotations. Just don't use her in tournaments, though. You will suffer. And speaking of suffering, let's move on to my personal main, Shigoki. How it pains me that my main has gone from bottom 3, top 3, to bottom 3 again. What a roller coaster. Shigoki is bad. There's honestly no way to sugarcoat it. He's bad, and he's always a hot topic in the community, as there are those who think he's OP and those who think he is garbage. Shigoki did used to be an absolute monster with a one-shot hug, passive super armor, hyper armor lights, and 130 damage fully charged Konobo if you built it right. I regret nothing and feel no shame towards those pesky Sensen Shinobis back in Season 1. Fight me. Shigoki now has all that removed and is in a sorry state. However, me being me, I'm a masochist and still believe he can put in work in a team fight. Let's look at what he has now. His headbutt can do damage, and his hug now works like Lawbringer's long arm, and it can heal Shugo back for a small amount of HP while dealing damage to the opponent. It's pretty neat, and I still want a hug finisher. Give it to me, Yubi, or I'll eat all your pizza rolls in the studio. Now, Shigoki's damage compared to meta heroes is low, and his chain is not that all threatening. But with the recent recovery buff, is a tad bit safer. In your standard matchmaking, you will perform very well, and Shigoki has two of the best feats in the game, Juggernaut and Staggering Blow. We already know what Jug is, but Staggering Blow is a beast of its own. You have the ability, if performed correctly, to keep someone in an infinite until they die, and there is nothing they can do about it. It is as evil and satisfying as it sounds. Not to mention it can disrupt the entire team fight. Just be careful, as it can cause friendly fire and knock down your teammates. Don't be that guy. In tournaments, Shigoki will get wrecked for his lunch money and it will be stolen. So if you want to suffer, go ahead and play him. He has some amazing fashion, an amazing personality, and is overall fun to play despite his bad state. Now, speaking of someone's viability being a roller coaster, let's move to the Wulin. And there is one spicy hero that I believe is a sleeper pick despite his low HP. Zanhu. Zanhu is a hero that I surprisingly don't see that often in matchmaking, and I can kind of see why. When compared to the rest of the Wulin, JJ can pump out insane damage, has more health. Tiandi's just Tiandi, and he's still strong even after the nerf, and Shaolin is going around healing everyone with no consequence. Don't get me started on Invigorate with its current design. You pretty much get rewarded for losing. Anyways, that's a hot topic for a different day. Zanhu can pump out more damage than JJ at times, and he can be very oppressive in a team fight. However, his biggest issue is his low HP and situational tier 4 feat. Let's go over his feats that can make him strong. He has all of his default feats which synergize with each other, and he has winner's advantage, and this can cause him to output some massive damage. His zone is undodgeable and is a great peeling tool. However, lack of HP means you have to be more careful about what you do. His unblockable ice are kind of meh, as they're the ones I seem to parry quite consistently, and others share that same sentiment. He has all the tools to be very good, and he is in his own right, but there are others that just do his job more effectively. Zanhu used to never be in this state. There was a time where he was a bottom 3 pick, and I even made a video discussing it some years ago. Boy alive, did that ruffle some feathers, and look at him now. He's in a solid state. You, much like other heroes on this list, you'll be able to perform with him very well, as he has strong tools and dodge recoveries. These recoveries are good, but not as impressive as someone like Tiandi before he got nerfed recently. He is someone I would consider to be fairly balanced, and there's not too much to his kit that is overbearing and oppressive compared to other heroes. It's a simple kit. He also has some pretty good finishers, fashions, weapons, and a responsive dialogue system where he literally talks shit to the opponent. I recommend you give him a try, as he is quite fun and can perform very well. Let's get into a few honorable mentions right quick before we go into the final one. I won't be going into detail on these aside from the fact that they are cool and can be strong, so yeah, fight me. Hidakiri, a mixture between Warden and Shigoki. Yeah. Kensei, one of the most balanced heroes in the game and gives off full weeb vibes. Conqueror, yes, fight me. I think he is cool and can be strong in a team fight in his own regards. Warmonger, strong feats, amazing frame advantage, fashion, and overall brutality. And then Nuxia. If used right, she can keep the mid lane completely clear and rack up renown for her and her team. Now, here comes the difficult one, as the Outlanders only have 3 heroes, and I already placed Pirate as an overrated hero, and Afira is running around everywhere. So that leaves us with Medjai. Medjai is meta, without a doubt, and you would expect a lot more people to play him due to that. However, I feel like the reason why we don't see him as much, or at least why I don't see him as much, is due to how one-dimensional his moveset is. He puts out amazing damage in a team fight, if not at some of, or the highest in the game. His ganks are broken, especially with Orochi's Storm Rush, and That move is an issue in of itself. However, I feel like most people don't fully understand him, and that's a possibility on why he's not seen as much. A good Magi can carry a team fight, and his feats are designed around it. His 1v1s are very lackluster with some of the lowest damage bashes in the game and a basic moveset. It's not all that impressive considering his second stance is just a worse version of Berserker. And to even do decent damage, you need to get both his passives active. Once you get that momentum going, it's hard to stop a Magi, and it's a surprise to what his damage can be done in staff mode. And I'm honestly surprised it has not been nerfed yet either. A good portion of the community sees him as boring, and I can understand why with what I mentioned previously. However, I feel like that is why he is underrated. He is strong, very strong, and nearly everyone at a top level can agree that he is a strong pick in every team comp and is a must pick. On a side note, I do enjoy his personality, and he seems to enjoy his job a bit too much, as he is a very curious fellow when he is idle and is always looking around curiously. Not to mention, Egyptian culture is not shown as much in many games, as the stigma is there's nothing but sand in Egypt, which there is, but their culture is rich with history and underappreciated and underrepresented in shows and adaptations. Thankfully, the For Honor devs do a pretty good job of showing Egyptian mythos and Magi's fashion, weapon, and language. So give him a try. He is strong and very easy to play, and you won't have to worry about your randoms as much with him, and he will shine very well in a coordinated team, but overall, he's going to shine. Just give him a try. He's not as boring as people make him out to be. So let me know how y'all enjoyed this one. I'm about 5 pages into the script at this point with a cold, and my brain is dry after writing all this. However, it was a fun video to make. Let me know who are your most underrated heroes and why. With that being said, don't forget to subscribe to become a SEAL baby. And I'll see all y'all in the next one.